Well, hello, welcome to the first Notary Governance call of March 14th. Happy Pi Day, everybody. So on this call today, we have the same kind of set agenda. We're going to start out with some of the government's updates on the roadmap very quickly and then move into notaries. Notaries for you, we're going to highlight the new training video that Phil put together. We're going to walk through some FAQs that we've been receiving in Slack and kind of update that so everyone can benefit. Then we're going to move into the proposals. We have 5 proposals to kind of discuss. These have been on the radar before in past calls. So this is just one last chance to kind of put these on your radar for discussion and see if you have any comments. For the working groups, we have 2 updates today, one from KZ and the Enterprise Fil Plus. He'll be walking you through updates around private data. And then RG will be on the phone to walk through the 2 proposals, 829 and 833, as well as an update and a guest speaker on the accelerator program for Greater Heat. I anticipate having time at the end of this call for any discussions or open issues you have. So with that, let's take a look at what we have on the deck. As a reminder, if you're ever looking to join these notary calls, we post this in the public Phil channel. So you can join that channel and see all the times that are coming up. And on the agenda, if you add this to your Google Calendar, you can then follow the 2 times that we host every other week. If there's an item that you want to see on the agenda for future governance calls, we create a repo in the GitHub, the link's here in the deck. If you just leave a comment, hey, Kev, I would love to discuss proposal 123 or a comment in Slack, we'll be sure to add it to the agenda. All I ask is that you comment on that issue 24 to 48 hours in advance so we have time to bake it into the schedule. This will be the last time that we're using Airtable for the SLA participation. So right now in the chat of this call, I just dropped a link to the Airtable form. This Airtable form is what you'll use to fill out the meeting time for today, today's date, your organization. If you're a notary, we're going to use this for the leaderboard that we'll talk about shortly. If you're a storage provider, if you're an applicant, if you're a community member joining or watching this call, this is a way that you can kind of symbolize your participation in the program. This comes in really handy for notary elections if you'd like to participate in the future. So notaries on the call, that link is in the chat. Go ahead and fill out that Airtable form. Starting in 2 weeks, though, we're going to start using the actual leaderboard for the participation on these calls. So I have a screenshot here of what it looks like. And essentially the flow, and we'll talk about this in great detail, is that we will send you a token code during this meeting. You'll then sign into the leaderboard using your GitHub handle and your account creation. You'll then take that token code, and then that will mark your attendance for this call, and it will automatically update in the calls attendance section of the leaderboard. We'll also go back and pull all of the data from Airtable and port that in there. So all of your past participation for 2023 is counted. But again, this will be the last time that we're using Airtable to kind of log our participation on these calls. So with that, here's the governance update. If you're new to the conversation, we have a series of Slack channels. We talk about these on every call. So if you're looking for a long description, I recommend going back to the YouTube channel. Or if you're new, just pull these from the deck. And this is how we're talking about issues that impact the social channels within Fil Plus. We have a governance team that's here to support you. Here's all of our names and our contact information. We're all available on Slack, and we are the governance that's going to help you onboard the data, unblock you if you're a notary, or answer any questions if you're new to the community. If you're not sure who to ping, you could always reach out to me and I'll route your question to the best POC as we go forward. We have been working on a mission statement and a roadmap for quite some time. And on the next call in the 2 weeks, on the 28th, Galen will walk through this in a lot of detail. But essentially what the governance team is putting together is a roadmap of the projects in flight so that you as a community can kind of see what's coming in development for tooling, for strategic changes or documentation. And we're hoping that this is a good way to kind of loop you in on what you'll expect to see with Filecoin Plus in 2023 and give us input as we work to make this as stable and easy to use as possible. So we'll have a real detailed update on this one in 2 weeks. Just wanted to make you aware as a community that we're working on this right now, and we'll have updates to follow in the next call. FIP 56 has been ongoing for quite some time. I say quite some time. In the world of crypto, quite some time, a few weeks now. And what 56 is looking to do is change that consensus in the model on this. So there is a last call that is currently open in this 2-week period. So if you haven't been able to read this FIP, or you haven't been able to comment, or this is the first time you're looking at it, right there we have a discussion thread linked in the deck And that's a great way for you to go get a little bit more information on this one, or if you have any questions. I'm going to pause, since this is the first time on the governance call that we've discussed this FIP, and see if anybody has any questions about essentially what's going on with this, how would this impact notaries, or any discussions that you might have seen. So I'll pause and turn it over for anybody's questions on FIP 56. Either an early morning or lucky, not a lot of comments on this FIP. That's probably not the case. I saw hundreds on that as we go through it. But if anybody, oh, Danny, I see your hand. Floor is yours, bud.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to note that with my other hat at the Filecoin Foundation, I've been involved in sort of looking at this process. So if anybody has any questions and they don't want to talk about it in this meeting, I'm happy to chat. That's it.
Thanks, Danny. If anything comes up later in the call, we can always come back and discuss this in more detail. If you took away that we're typically in the 2-week last call period, and this is a great way for you to weigh in on this FIP if you haven't done so already. All right, notaries, with that, let's get to all your issues right off. So in Slack, we had 3 issues that kicked off in the week, just kind of giving you a roll-up of where those issues stand and make you aware. The first was the dashboard. This was flagged by Winan, where it was currently not displaying full data cap allocation as it went through. Big shout out to Phil and Simon and all the whole teams on our contractor for fixing this. So this is good to go. If you're still seeing issues, let us know. But as of last testing over the last 2 days, this has been fixed. The second issue that was flagged was the glyph verifier. So this is if somebody is requesting less than 32 gigs of data, they can automatically just connect to that data allocation request with their GitHub application. And we had a flag earlier in the week that that system was not operating as intended. So thanks for flagging this. Again, thanks to Phil and Simon, you guys running this down and making sure that it's all set. So again, this should be back up. If you see any issues, let us know. And the third was just linking the community standards board for any kind of Slack discussion. We've kind of talked about this on some past calls, is just making sure that as we're communicating, we're doing so like in a business professional way. If we have any discussions that might take long term, it goes into GitHub, and we're using Slack for like flagging issues, rapid iteration, but we shouldn't be using any kind of terminology on names or any kind of derogatory slang as it goes off. So as a friendly reminder, if in doubt, trend to business communications and we'll be good to go.
Hey, Carrie.
Please.
I have some stuff to add with the issues. So there's one more issue that I want to add, and that's the fact that the SSA bot, since I think this Friday, was not working properly. It wasn't showing up. That was because it wasn't getting data. It wasn't understanding that the wallets are empty for many LDN applications. So that's why you don't see the bot showing up. And that's because the API that we're getting that data from wasn't working properly. So that data was also from Glyph. So as you can see here, like 3 of the problems that we have today, which is the Glyph verifier, the interplanetary dashboard, and also the SSA bot not refilling wallets. Those are all likely because Glyph is making an update for the FVM. It seems very transitory, and I think it shouldn't come up again. If it does, then we'll investigate it more, and we'll have like logs in place, and we can talk to the Glyph team to handle the situation. Yeah, that's good. That's all for. Yeah. Thanks.
Well said as always, Phil. Thank you. With that, if you're a new 4th round notary, this is your first time being added to the LDN or the multi-sig, congratulations. So Phil put together a very detailed walkthrough guide, and it's hung on the public YouTube channel for Filecoin Plus. And what it is a short 5.5-minute video that just kind of covers the basic steps. How do you log into the registry? When you're in the registry, how do you connect your ledger? Once you've connected your ledger and your GitHub, how do you find the applications and go back and sign them? So if you were a new notary and you're looking for just like how do I simply TLDR this process to use the tooling, Phil did a great job putting this together. As a quick recap, we're using the registry to sign in to view the applications and select them. You can also then in the registry open up a GitHub, and in GitHub you can then see all of the details on the application. Who's the organization? How long have they been around? Where are they using the data? How are they storing it? And all of those comments can populate in GitHub. So by using the registry in GitHub, you'll be really effective to kind of go through there, do your diligence, make sure that it's transparent, and then allocate your data cap. If you have any questions on this process, the Phil Private Notaries channel is a great way to ask that question. It's a small community of just notaries and governance team, and we'll unblock or answer anything that you may have. With that, these are the FAQs that I've gotten via DMs over the last couple of days. So I wanted to make sure that this information lived on past that silo. So the first question I got was, hey, I'm looking at an application and I see that another notary has started diligence, but has said that they are not going to sign that application for whatever reason. Does that mean as a notary can no longer sign that application? Well, here's the answer. You can still sign it. So in this case, where you're looking at an application, somebody has already said that they won't sign it for whatever reason. That does not mean that that application is completely stopped. If in the process of your diligence, you uncover additional information, or you know this provider or application and you're able to reach out and connect that, you're more than welcome. There will be different standards within the notaries on how they're approving and reviewing and onboarding this data. So again, just because one notary has said no, doesn't mean that you have to say no as well. All I would recommend is that you are quite transparent in your diligence, not just saying yes to say yes sake, but provide additional information on why you're making this decision or why you're moving forward. But again, it is okay to sign an application just because somebody else has not. The second is, can you use a form to collect diligence on an application? Some of the most really successful notaries that are signing a lot of data do in fact use a form. So they've created either a Google form, an Airtable, or another setup, and it requests some of the most common information that they're asking in GitHub, like who's your organization, how long have you been in business, where can I find more examples of the data, whatever you want to put in that form as long as it correlates with your data diligence plan. So again, a form is just fine. The only thing that I would caution is make sure that you keep it transparent. So if you are using that form, linking to it so that the community can see what questions you're asking. And if it ever comes back and we're saying, hey, can we do some kind of an audit on what this form data was? You're able to provide that at a point in the future. So again, a diligence form is just fine. And some of the top notaries are doing that very same thing. The second or third, how can I ensure that there's transparency in my diligence plan? GitHub. So what I mean by this is if you are doing any communications, whether it's in Slack or whether it's an email or any kind of offline sources of communication, be sure to come back into GitHub in that application and leave a comment. Like, hey, I'm Kevin. I did diligence on this application via an email and talking with them. They answered 1, 2, and 3 questions. The reason for this is that other notaries can see what questions you've asked, as well as if we ever come back and we're looking at this from a trust and transparency standpoint, it does a lot for you as a notary to say, this is the questions that I've done, this is the diligence plan that I followed. So just making sure that you're mindful of increasing that transparency in GitHub will make sure that you're putting that all in the right place. And fourth, hey, I'm a new notary. Where do I go to find these applications to sign them? So you have 3 different places that you can go. The first is in Slack. We have a channel called Phil Plus Applications. What we ask is anybody who's submitted an LDN application, hasn't seen it signed, they can then go in that Slack channel and say, hey, my name's Kevin, here's my application. I'm looking for a notary to sign. And when you see those in Slack, it's a little bit easier to communicate with those applicants because you know you not only have a GitHub way to contact them, as well as Slack. So if you're a notary looking for applications to get on board with, that's a great place to start. It's just check those applications and start diligence there. The second is in the actual registry, it will list the LDNs that are awaiting signature. Right now it's around 300 and there's no way to sort. So sometimes that makes it a little bit confusing as a newer notary to find out what to actually go through. Phil addresses this in the walkthrough guide that he put together. But if you actually wanted to see what LDN applications came back, going to GitHub and just viewing those GitHub applications is also an easy way to just kind of scan through if something's in your country of origin or in your wheelhouse as far as workflows. That's a really effective way to pull those out. So these are the 4 questions that I've got recently via DMs, wanted to flag it, and I'll pause to see if anybody has any questions or elaborations.
Hey, Kevin. So this is Nato, and I have kind of one more question. I noticed that since we started this process, we started receiving inbox messages from people requesting us to sign for them. So are we allowed to do that, or we just go to these specific groups?
Such a great question. When you say inbox, I'm assuming email?
Slack.
Yeah. So because
So
your
they message us directly,
yeah, because your notary information is public in the repository, some applicants may DM you. That is just fine. So if an applicant DMs you and says, hey, can you please review my application? That's good to go. All I would say is be sure that you're doing the diligence in the application. So that means that if Lucky was to message you and say, hey, can you please look at my application? And you look at it, any kind of communication on the application isn't taking place in that Slack, but it's taking place. So that's a great way. I'm happy to hear that applicants are taking the initiative and reaching out. You're fine to go look at those applications.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that question. Okay, we launched the multi-sig about 2 weeks ago. This was 835. There were some notaries that changed their ledger address or had technical blockers, or I think we've had everyone complete the disclosure. So what we're doing right now is we opened up a 2-week sprint to collect any additional information on the ledger. This is a manual process that we have to go through now to manually add you folks. So if you were one of the notaries that did not have your ledger in hand, we are manually adding you in that process. What we're doing is we're bunching those together and putting them in. We're updating that GitHub issue 835. I think this only impacts about 3 or 4 notaries that missed that initial ledger change date. So just to let you know, we're going to put this in probably end of week or early next week. And then we maybe do one more update batch after that. So if you haven't verified your ledger, we will manually add you in. Everybody else who has completed their disclosure form, that has set up their ledger and verified it in the registry, congratulations, you're all set. We filled the multi-sig about a week and a half ago with data, and you are cleared to start signing. So notaries, you have the onboarding guide, you have the FAQ, you have the data, and you have the Slack for whatever support we can give you. Good luck, great things, and we're here to support you however we can. So with that, let's take a look at the next section we have, which is the open proposals. So we had 4 issues that were in the last stage. We decided to leave these open for one final round of input. And this is the staking proposal. This is the auto close after 2 weeks proposal. This is the KYC on data cap removal, and then the trust and transparency. Later on the call, RJ will talk more about the trust and transparency code of conduct because these are closing out. But just to make you aware, if you come into GitHub, this is a great way to see what open proposals are on the roadmap and then give your feedback. If you're a notary, SLA 2, 3, 4, or 5, we're also looking for you to leave comments on these, even if it's just love it or hate it for this reason. That goes a long way in helping us make sure that we're giving you the right tooling and documentation, as well as help keep you active. So I'm going to pause and see if anybody has any final comments on any of these 4 issues. We've had these on for a while. If anything changes, let us know. Otherwise, you might see these closing out in the next couple of days. We had this issue. We discussed it on the last call. This was flagged by the community. Thank you. And it's essentially saying if you have multiple data sets, should they be in one single application or should they be spread across? We discussed this on length on the last call on February 28th. We had some lively chatter in this one in the GitHub application itself. So I just wanted to see one last time if anybody has any thoughts or any questions on this application before it kind of moves into final review. Straightforward as well. And this last one, essentially right now, we're using GitHub for a lot of our tooling, and that's probably not going away anytime soon. It requires an account, it's verified, and then we can also have the audit trail that goes through. But the way that we're collecting this and we're running the bots that go on top of it can sometimes make that process a little bit tedious when we start to pull data out of it. So this proposal is converting those files to a JSON file to increase the trust and transparency and standardization and reliability. We talked about this briefly on the last call. I'm going to pause. Phil, I know that you've been leading the charge. If there's anything you'd like to add to this or anybody in the community, this is a great time.
Hey, yeah, so the conversation continued for a bit. So there's some stuff that the engineers, Fabri and Hussein, who are going to be building this, they had some thoughts on this proposal, as well as Katalin from the DMOB team. So the big change or discussion we are trying to have right now is whether we should have one big JSON file for all the applications, or many small JSON files, each JSON file relating to one LDN application. There are pros and cons to each. If it is one big JSON file, it is easier to scrape since it's just one file, supposedly. And it is like, it also minimizes the number of files in the GitHub repo itself, because there might be a max limit of JSON files that we can have. Now, the problem with one big JSON file is that there might be merge conflicts if in case we want to edit two applications at the same time. That could lead to really bad, that could lead to really inconvenient things for notaries. And so that's where the discussion is. We are leaning towards many small JSON application files, but if you guys have any thoughts, feel free to speak up.
Thanks, Phil. If anything changes on the call, we'll have plenty of time at discussion at the end. All right, with that, probably why you guys are here is to listen to the sweet, wonderful KZ. I'm going to turn it over to the working groups. Kevin, my friend.
Thanks, K-Ray. Hi, everyone. I wanted to give a quick update on the E-Fil Plus private data pilot. Essentially, this is sort of a Q1 update overall. I just wanted to share some of our statistics, our ongoing tests, and our next steps. So as you can see, in Q1 here, we've had 11 new applications come in, and we kicked this pilot off in end of October. So over a 5-month period, we've had 25 applications. So we're averaging around, 5 to 6 applications per month. So it's good to see we're continuing to have applicants sort of apply and go through the process. On the chart on the right, you can see the top chart. This sort of shows the phases that I'm measuring as applicants are going through. So they're expressing interest, then they register, they go through the KYB check. Some of them have to find SPs to complete the application, and then they await their first allocation of data cap, and then they're onboarding data. So you can see we have multiple clients right now waiting on KYB. So they're going through the process of getting approved. And also we have 9 applicants that have received data cap and are onboarding data, making deals. The other chart at the bottom there on the right is just a snapshot of applicant locations. So you can see I have the statistics listed here, 16 applicants from Asia, 5 from USA, and 4 from Europe. So it's a good distribution there. We'd love to see continued success across different regions of the world. And overall, this pilot is representing 100 plus PIBs of potential data cap to be approved and allocated. There's a link there that you can go in and look at each application individually if you wish. We're ongoing with testing for KYC and KYB. So know your customer, know your business. We have some third-party products that we've been working with, clients are utilizing to get approved. And that helps them build initial trust, especially if they're a brand new actor in the ecosystem. This gives them some support in terms of who they are, who their business is, and they're connected to each other. We're also testing random assignments of the E-Fil Plus notaries. We have a small subset of notaries that are part of the multi-sig. They're following an SLA where every time there's a new allocation request, right now I'm manually going in and assigning 2 notaries randomly. And it's been going well. So the engagement levels are high. As they're assigned, they're expected to reply with at least a comment within 2 to 3 days. And I would say it's 80% or plus right now of engagement. So that's good. For the notaries on the call that are in the E-Fil Plus multi-sig, be on the lookout because the number of allocations is growing, and I'm almost assigning multiple applications per day. So make sure your emails are not going to junk. You'll get a notification from GitHub for you to log in and check where you've been tagged. So what's next for E-Fil over the rest of the quarter, and probably into the next quarter? We'll continue supporting onboarding of private data sets. I'm going to send out a client experience survey here in the next 2 weeks. So for those clients that have gone through each stage of the process so far, we want to get some feedback to see how their experience has been working with SPs, going through this process so that we can iterate and make this better longer term. We'd also like to start automating some of the processes that I'm manually managing right now. So that's assigning notaries, following up on comments and those types of things. And then finally, we're looking to increase the allocation request amounts. Again, this is part of a larger enterprise initiative. So as we have larger data sets coming in from enterprise customers, we want to be able to allow them to receive data cap in larger allocation amounts so that they can onboard data efficiently. So we're going to test that here at the end of this quarter with, we have an application from CERN via COSP. They're going to be onboarding a small POC of 3.5 PIBs. And then once that's done, we're going to up the allocation request amount to over 6.5 PIBs times 5 copies. So it'll be 20 plus PIBs. So that's good. All the details are listed on the website at the bottom. If anyone has any questions, you can reach me in Slack at Kevin Z. Okay, great. Thanks, Kev. Any questions? I think we have a few minutes probably.
Great update. KZ, if anybody wanted to join the next call, is there a next scheduled call for the E-Fil Plus program?
I've been on and off with, so the calls are bi-weekly, every other Tuesday following the same timing as the notary call. So it would be next Tuesday. And I will update the calendar. We'll likely have a call. Participation has been quite low. So what I've been doing is doing sort of an async update in the E-Fil working group Slack channel, providing updates there. So I'll likely have a call next week and then we'll continue for now. Yeah. But if anyone ever has questions or comments, the E-Fil working group Slack channel is the best place to post something.
Hey, KZ, I have a question.
Sure.
So what is the usual turnaround time for the time of data cap for E-Fil Plus?
Sorry, say that again. What is the
average
time to data cap?
Yeah, the usual average. I know the sample size is not a lot, but what is the typical size? What is the typical waiting time? Because as you know, there are a few clients that approach us on big data exchange, and some of them, they don't have data cap yet. I just want to manage expectation on both sides.
It's a great question, actually. I think we're keeping those statistics on the main statistics page. K-Ray, I don't know if you have the ability to pull that up right now, the interplanetary statistics, and it'll show you just regular LDN time to data cap, and then there's an E-Fil, a separate section for the E-Fil applications.
Okay, yeah, I've seen it.
I think it's around the same timing overall. So it's probably less than a week, 95th percentile. But let's double check. I'll look it up as I finish my update here and post it in the Slack chat.
Got it. No, I've seen that that site before, so it's all good. Oh, maybe not this one.
You're quick, Phil. You're so quick. Yeah, Phil just put the link there in chat for you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Easy. Thank you for the update. CB, great question. Thank you for that. And Phil, thanks for putting that link for everyone to see as we go forward. If we have any more questions on E-Fil Plus, we'll have plenty of time at the end of the discussion to circle back to this if anything comes to mind. With that, I'll turn it over to Sweet RG for our trust and transparency updates.
Thanks so much, Kerry. So just a few quick proposals here. I'll discuss them more broadly next week in the TNT working group calls. Most of the proposals were passed. So the issue that issue 8-9, if you go to it, was about, do we create a standalone code of conduct? And then there was a discussion in which some of the folks here on call, including Danny, put their input. So kind of the way to move forward is two parts. One, we have decided that there will be a standalone code of conduct for the TNT working group. The detailed post describing the code of conduct, parts of which were derived from the contributor covalent. Thanks again, Danny, for that, for sharing that. Will be published tomorrow in the TNT working group channel, and will be pinned to the channel for everyone's convenience. So the second part to this is that there's a few questions around, okay, who will enforce the code of conduct? So right now, until the details around the TNT board are finalized, and the details include the legal team and Filecoin Foundation getting back to us on the different mechanism designs for staking that were proposed, and their recommendations on that. Until we have that feedback, we will proceed with the current kind of consensus model where, we will open a GitHub issue, we will have a timeline for discussion and consensus, and then we'll ratify it that way. But in the medium term, we will have a TNT board, and then if you have questions regarding that, I'm happy to answer right now. But the TLDR there is that we had a list published on GitHub regarding members who wanted to join the TNT DAO, which is now being called the board. We're not calling it a DAO yet because integration with smart contracts, in which, in the way that a DAO should have, is not possible yet, at least from a technical dependency perspective for us. And so we're going to call it the TNT board. And then once we hear back on staking from FF Legal, the decision making and consensus will be ratified through the said board. And consequences include, but are not limited to, giving a public warning that might have an impact on reputation of a stakeholder, blacklisting addresses using the tooling that we're building, as well as flagging this to the stakeholders who take care of Filecoin Slack, and permanently blacklisting an account or an address from Filecoin Slack. But yeah, these are not exhaustive. Please look out for tomorrow for the exhaustive code of conduct. A lot of it will be guidelines focused, so it won't say things like this word isn't allowed and this word is allowed. I know there was a few questions on the issue itself. That's not the point of code of conduct. The code of conduct is just guidelines to guide the community on how you should behave in your daily interactions. And there aren't black and white rules here. So just wanted to flag that out. And I'll take questions on this towards the end of my presentation, so we can move on to the next one. So the next one is about upfront KYC. There was a lot of positive comments on this. So this proposal is considered passed. The main concern were two. One was regarding KYC solutions for the Asia region, and then the other concern was regarding the Filecoin governance team becoming a data owner. So right now, the approach that we have decided to take is we, as the TNT working group, are recommending community members to do such checks. We already have some community members in Europe who've taken the initiative to create a forum and do these checks. The trail for that is actually available on issue 833. So the way we want to move forward with this is we want to encourage other community members from other regions to take charge of scoping out a third-party KYC vendor. So that might be Trulio, Truly You, which has been mentioned in the issue, or that might be another KYC vendor that we haven't, we don't know of yet, and then conduct checks on behalf of the community. We will look into supporting this effort either financially or through implementation, but that's still kind of to be discussed. And so to execute on this, I'll post a form in the TNT working group channel for community members who might be interested in kind of doing checks on behalf of the community. And this might look like, creating a new entity and like you doing this for profit. So the way this might work is, you can actually charge an incoming client to do KYC, and let them know that you are going to how you're going to manage your data, how you're going to manage their data, and these questions will be asked in the form that I will share today. But that's kind of how we want to move forward. I think this approach is decentralized enough, if not the best solution, to enable third-party KYC and address upfront, top of the funnel abuse. Because one of the big concerns that came up in January is we have a lot of people applying for data cap who might be fake accounts, fake applications, and so there needs to be a cost associated with applying for data cap, and data cap is a very novel resource in the network. So we're going to try this out and see if this works and how well it works, and then post the results for the community in the upcoming governance calls. And I think we have one more, right, Carrie? Yeah, so this is very early on, but I'm just flagging this. So I was told by someone from the SP Growth team at Protocol Labs that Greater Heat, which is a large Filecoin SP, is initiating a program to convert 30 existing non-Filecoin miners to become Filecoin SPs. And they're looking to bring close to 100 PIBs of raw byte power data, which roughly translates to 1,000 PIBs of data cap that will be flowing. And so right now, what I've been told so far is it's all public data. They're willing to do KYC, so we will not be using E-Fil Plus for this. We will be using the normal LDN process. But I still want to flag this, especially from the TNT perspective, that the new miners will not get any kind of special treatment in terms of their deal making, but we do want to make sure that their transition to become Filecoin miners is smooth. And so right now, this is just like a FYI for the community, and I'm still waiting to hear on details. And I've requested the representative from Greater Heat to create an issue on GitHub and publicly explain their project so that there can be full transparency on what they're trying to do. I think this opens up a lot of exciting opportunities, as well as this pilot itself. Seeing that a successful SP in the ecosystem is helping onboard other SPs, and so we of course want to make sure the data cap is not a blocker for them, but not at the cost of abuse, of course. And so we will design a pilot. We might design a pilot, and they were requesting to create a different multisig, but that is yet to be determined. I think I'm of the perspective that we should use the same multisig and then support their efforts and make sure that that as they're onboarding new data, data cap is not a blocker. So if you are kind of further interested in this topic or want to learn more, you can just DM me or wait for the public issue to come out. But yeah, those are the three main updates from Trust and Transparency, and I'll be discussing all of these three as well as more issues next week on Tuesday at the Trust and Transparency Working Group call.
Excellent. RG, thank you for that. This is a great time if anybody has questions about the accelerator with Greater Heat, the upfront KYC proposal, or the recent passing of the Code of Conduct for transparency. Any questions? Right. A lot of this is happening in GitHub. Feel free to go participate in those comments. And as RJ said, we'll see a GitHub issue with greater heat coming in the future. And this will not be going through the E-Fil Plus. Good flags. So with that, with 15 minutes left on the call, this is our time. So if there's anything top of mind, questions on the onboarding, any of the proposals we talked about, issues from Slack or any kind of community, this is your forum. The floor is yours.
Hey Carrie, I wanted to bring up one more thing actually. So many of you may or may not know that today is going to be the launch of the FVM. Onto mainnet. And so there's going to be many opportunities for us going forward to build stuff on the FVM for Fil Plus. For example, now on the FVM, now you can get data cap as smart contracts. So if people can launch smart contracts, and smart contracts can automatically manage data cap with the logic written on the smart contract. So with this, Fil Plus will evolve in many different ways. So I just want to note that. And also, secondly, I also want to note that with every big launch like this, it could impact many systems, including some of the Fil Plus tooling. As you have seen with all the glyph errors today, like SSA bot not refilling, dashboard being slow, and glyph verifier not working, there may or may not be some small bugs here and there, but we will be there to catch all the bugs as best as we can. And yeah, just letting you know that today is the FVM launch, and these are the implications. That's good. Let me know if you have any thoughts.
Hey, if I may, Carrie. Hello, everybody.
Please, hello.
I lead a program called Moon Landing, and it is a program to also facilitate newer SPs to onboard our ecosystem by storing large open data sets. We used to leverage Slingshot, but now I am expanding to outside of Slingshot data sets as well. So you might see some of our Moon Landing participants acting as data preparers, asking for LDN and data cap so that they can work with storage providers, also participating in the Moon Landing program to store these data sets. And the program replication, we encourage 10x, so 10 copies of each data set. So for these applications, they might be asking for 10 times the size of the data set, and that is for disaster resilience purposes. So just wanted to give a heads up. If you see these data preparers coming in, please let me know if you have any concerns, giving them the data cap, and please support them. Thank you.
That's great. Is there a link that you have that we can link to this deck in chat? And I'll put it in the after meeting report for YouTube, Kara.
Is there a what? Sorry, I didn't catch that
For
word.
the Moon Landing project, is there a page, a portal, a link?
Yeah, there's a landing page. It's moon-landing.io. I can send it to you, Carrie, after this.
That'd be great. Thanks. We'll put that in the agenda notes. Perfect. Alexandre on the ball. Gifts of bugs and links. Thank you for that. All right, final call. If anybody has any questions or issues or discussion, this is the last opportunity before the second call kicking off here.
Hi, Kerry. Perhaps we can talk about our governance call for the wider community members if people want to register. Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucky, and I am the governance project manager at Filecoin Foundation, essentially overseeing Filecoin improvement proposals. We are launching our first community governance town hall. So feel free to join if you want to listen to, or if you want to participate in, governance processes at that FIP level, as well as understand what's going on, discuss challenges, and also share your thoughts in terms of how we can improve the governance for, improvement proposals for Filecoin as a protocol. I will leave a registration link. Feel free to register. It's commencing on the 27th of March. And you are all welcome to join as Filecoin community members. This is definitely different from your Filecoin Plus governance calls. So we are just covering the entire Filecoin ecosystem and discussing FIPS, Filecoin improvement proposals. I have just dropped the registration link in the chat. Also, feel free to message me, or you can also channel your conversations or your questions to Kevin, and he will let us know. Otherwise, see you there on the 27th.
Lucky, I appreciate that. Just a quick follow-up. What are some of the topics that you anticipate talking about on the next call coming up that we could look forward to?
Good question. So it's the first call coming up is definitely the inaugural conversation, and we're hoping to discuss, first of all, Governance 101, which is essentially letting community members know what happens when an improvement proposal is sent for review for the wider community members. So we're going to be looking at that process from the discussion point until when it's implemented on the network. We potentially will talk about like network upgrades and potentially how that works, and if people have comments or feedback as to how that works out. We also will be looking at hearing back from the community in terms of how they perceive governance, if they have suggestions or questions or comments as to how we can improve governance processes, especially for a fast-growing protocol like Filecoin. So it's more like a frequently asked questions session, just to listen to everyone and answer questions, and then obviously talk about like the FIP process and really how that works out. Yeah. Let me see if I have additional documentation that can help. Oh.
It's okay to dig it up now. So it sounds like a lot of discussion around the FIPS taking place and a lot of the governance. That's great. So FIP 56 is probably a big topic that will be on there. I appreciate you flagging that for us, Lucky. Thank you.
Definitely. I'm talking about FIP 56. I think you also mentioned that earlier. It's in the last call phase. So if you have not already, weighed in, shared your comments or thoughts, this is another opportunity for you to do so. It will be in the last call phase for another 2 weeks. Hopefully, I think it will leave the last call phase on the 24th of March, I believe, after which we'll be adopting a hybrid soft consensus approach in terms of reaching a decision on that FIP. So if you have not weighed in, it's a good chance for you to weigh in on that one.
Sounds great. Thanks again for that, Lucky. All right. Last call, if anybody has anything. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for coming to this first call of the governance. We'll have this on YouTube shortly. And again, as a friendly reminder, the next governance call will take place California Pacific time, 6 p.m. UTC 0100. Thanks for coming, guys. All the best. We'll see you in Slack and GitHub. Cheers.
Thanks, K-Ray. Thanks, everyone.
All right, big friendly hellos and welcome to the second Notary Governance call of March 14th. Let's take a look at what we have in store for today. We're going to kick off with updates around notaries. So we have the update around the onboarding guide, how to look at that video, where to access it, and what content's in it. We have a couple of the FAQs that have come through in Slack to make sure that you're getting the latest and greatest on that. And then just helping with Slack discussions that might have missed your radar and giving you an update across those. We'll move right into proposals after that. We had a couple of outstanding items that have been on the radar for the last couple of weeks. One last final discussion opportunity before we move forward, as well as two that were started from the community and Phil that we'll walk through and just make sure that you have a chance to get these on your radar and get a chance to discuss as we go forward. For the two working groups, we have updates from the Enterprise Fill Plus as well as Trust and Transparency. Kevin Z was on the morning call as well as RG. They kind of gave an update. In their absence, you'll have Deep, myself, Simon, and Phil to kind of step in and talk about those around the updates and that, and then one accelerator project coming in as well. We'll have lots of time, ideally, at the end of this call for any discussions that you may have. So with that, let's take a look. This governance call takes place on UTC 1500-01. I think there might be some schedule conflicts, so I might reach out to you notaries in the notaries channel to make sure that this time frame still works with all of the time zones taking place, just making sure that we're keeping this at a time that's conducive for the majority of the callers from around the world. But we do have this posted in the Google Calendar, so if you ever see that there, that'll be the source of truth and what we're looking at and going forward on that. Take just 1 second. Pause that. We also post the agenda in GitHub as a quick reminder. If there's any topics that you want to see discussed or flagged or reviewed, just drop a comment in that GitHub issue. I'll pull that up and then we'll go from there. And then we have the Notary SLA form. We've been using Airtable for this for the past few months. It's worked really well to kind of link this back to all the notaries that are on the call and give you a chance to kind of get your participation logged in. I'm dropping the link to Airtable now. This will be the last week that we're using Airtable for the sign-in for these notary governance calls. As we scale, we've now getting ready to roll out the notary leaderboard. What's nice about this leaderboard is it will have all the stats as far as like signing, participation. So in future sessions, we'll talk about how to fill this out, but as a quick plug, what it will mean is you'll receive a token code on the governance call. You'll sign into your notary leaderboard page with that token code, and that will mark your attendance and update automatically into this call without the manual process of us going on the back end and making sure that we have the right participant. So this is the last week we'll be using Airtable. The link is right there in our chat. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in this Zoom call or on Slack to get you squared away. So with that, quick update as far as governance goes. So these are the Slack channels that we communicate and participate. We've highlighted these on a couple of past governance calls, so I won't spend too much time, but if you're new to the community, new to getting started, this is where we do the majority of our communication outside of GitHub and these Slack channels. Take a look, and if you have any questions and you're kind of lost on where to go, as always, feel free to ping me and I'll help you out. I'm part of the governance team. We're here to help you with anything you may have or any questions that you have across this project. We all specialize in one specific area. So if you're looking for help or support, reach out to us and we'll be able to help you out. If you're unsure who to reach out to or where that question is best asked, again, if you send me a friendly DM, Kevin-FF, I'll be happy to help you out as we go forward on this one. But this is the governance team and we're here to help you. I'm sharing this. We're going to talk about this in a lot more detail on the call in 2 weeks. Essentially what this is the notary governance roadmap that we're working on. So what this will do is this will outline the projects that the team is working on to improve the project and make it a little bit more stable for everybody going forward. So what we're kind of doing is looking at these from 3 aspects, essentially the documentation, the tooling, and then also the strategic change proposals that go along with these. So we have this published. We're going to be rolling this out in great detail when Galen's on the call with us in 2 weeks. But just as a quick heads up, for those of you that are asking about mission statements and the roadmap coming up, we're going to share a lot of that information on the next call, share the link and let you see this on a public roadmap as we go forward on that. I'm going to take just 1 minute and mute. I think we have a leaked audio. There we go. Make it a little bit better here. Now, we have a community member that started off, just the FIP 0056. We talked about this in detail in the morning call, and we invited Lucky from the Filecoin Foundation to come join us and give a little bit more clarification on this. Essentially, what's going on right now with this FIP, it's in the final call for any kind of input. So I'm going to drop the link here in chat in just a moment. But in this discussion thread, there's a lot of communication on this FIP that's been going back and forth. And I think the big thing to have on your radar right now is that there is still time if you wanted to make your voice heard or read the review and how this will impact any of you. I'm going to pause and see if anybody had any questions about this FIP or any kind of conversation on it before we kind of go forward on FIP 56. I'm going to take that long pause to see that nobody has any kind of issues to bring up on this one. It's kind of straightforward, but then there's also a lot that goes into it with the sector multipliers and functions on this one. There is a community call that happens monthly where they discuss this in a lot of detail. They take input from the community. I share the details for that call after the morning in the Fil Plus Slack channel and the thread. Again, if you'd like to join that or get any more questions, we'll be happy to flag it. But I think the big takeaway for us in the Notary and Fil Plus community is that this FIP has about 2 weeks left in that open last call. So if you had any kind of questions or wanted to discuss this, we still have about a 2-week window for any comments you may have on it. So with that, over to the Notary specific portions of the call. There were a few issues that came through in Slack, just bringing these to the top of mind in case anybody was tracking these or had any questions. There were essentially 4. Phil, I know you're on the call. I spoke to these in the morning. Would you like to add any clarification just to kind of mix up the audio on this?
Yeah, sure. So hey guys, so there were a few bugs that happened in the past few week, because of Glyph having to update for the FVM update. So because of the FVM update, Glyph had to change their Lotus node, and because of that, we relied on Glyph to basically do a lot of interaction with the blockchain, whether it's reading transactions from the blockchain or posting stuff on the blockchain. So for example, that led to SSA bot not being able to detect whether an LDN application is out of data cap. It also led to the Glyph verifier not being able to issue 32 gigabytes for anyone that wants to get auto-verified for their client applications. Today, actually, there was also another Glyph outage, so that might lead to more outages in the future. I mean, in the very near future. It should be fixed now, but we need to adapt to this, and just reach out to me if you see any bugs. I think Simon, you wanted to flag one more bug?
Yeah, sure. Hey everyone. So I guess with the interplanetary dashboard, long story short of what was going on, to populate the data that shows up in the datacapstats.io page, we get a file from the Glyph team, which holds all of the deal data that clients make, and those data points show up on the dashboard. The Glyph team updated and compressed that file that we use and so without us knowing that, we ended up using that same file, and we weren't basically able to show some of the data that people were expecting to see. But overall, everything is fixed now, and the dashboard should be updated. And again, yeah, like Phil said, thank you for just like pointing this out as well.
Yeah. Also, finally, to add, props to Catalin on the DMUB team for fixing all these bugs like very last minute. For example, for the bug that Simon just mentioned, he had to make another service just to download the data, decompress it first before inputting it to the dashboard, and he did it within a few hours. So, or else it wouldn't have been fixed. And yeah. Good. Back to you, Kerry.
Yeah, thanks for that. One other thing I'd like to just say thanks to is like just the flags from the community. A few months ago, we were kind of getting our feet as we grew as a program, and colleagues that are working on this project as far as how we're communicating with each other. We have relinked the standards, and we'll talk about this when we get into the trust and transparency. But just as a call out, as far as how we're communicating, just that layer of business professionalism and just trying to keep everything above board. So it's been really helpful as we all kind of adhere to this and kind of get in line with how we're structuring that communication. So just want to say thank you for that as far as how we're communicating, whether it's GitHub and Slack. We've kind of had a marked improvement in that, and we'll just continue to strive on that. But we've linked the standards as far as what we're holding. We'll talk more about this for how Trust and Transparency has set their board up to review these things. So just again, thank you for that as we go forward and communicate. So notaries, fourth round notaries, welcome. Hello, you now have DataCap. We'll talk about that going forward. And we now have a video. So major big props and shout outs to Phil. Phil put together like a very short, succinct TLDR on how do you use the registry to view the applications and sign and approve DataCap. It's posted on YouTube in the Phil Plus section of the YouTube channel for Filecoin. The links here in the thread. And essentially what this will walk you through are step-by-step, how to sign into the registry, how to connect your ledger, how to make sure that you're connected to GitHub, how to search, sort, and see all of the applications in the registry. And then as a reminder, you can also log into GitHub to see these applications. It's a good source of truth to kind of review these on your own. That's where we're going to be leaving the diligence on these issues, and we'll talk about that in the call. And if you're also looking for this, we'll talk more about where do you find an open application if there's a lot of open things and how to see that and go forward on that. So again, this video is on YouTube. The link's here in the deck, which is posted in the Phil Plus channel. If you have any questions, big shout out to Phil for not only having a great video that's succinct, but putting this together in a limited time. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Phil?
Very quickly. Hey guys, so this just came out hot today in between the governance call in the morning and now actually. So Ezra from the Keiko team managed to very quickly optimize the Phil Plus registry. So that's the place where you guys go in and approve of applications. And now you don't need to wait a few minutes to load all the applications. Now instead of that, there's like a few seconds. That's because we're rendering it differently. And as you can see in this GIF, the Phil Plus registry loads very, very quickly. So big props to Ezra from the Keiko team. And of course, let me know if there's any bugs, because as with every launch, there may be bugs to this. And yeah, if you have anything, if you notice anything now, please reach out to me. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Phil. Appreciate that a lot.
Oh, and yeah, I think that's me too. So I just want to acknowledge and bring up today that today's the FVM launch. So big props, if anyone is here from the FVM team, big props to them for successfully launching FEVM to the mainnet. I think this is a huge opportunity for us, and it opens up many opportunities for the Filecoin network. For us in particular, Phil Plus, there's opportunities now of thinking of how to automate the allocation of DataCap. There will be many more things on that in the, coming soon. Right now, our focus is to make sure that there is a pathway for smart contracts on the FEVM to get DataCap. This is in the works. And also, just with any upgrade, there may be encountered bugs, like just today with the glyph node, and this week with the glyph node. So if you encounter anything strange, might be because of the FVM mainnet launch, and you can contact me for the bugs. Thank you.
Great. So notaries, thank you so much for all the DMs and questions. I've got a couple of them that have come through. I just wanted to bubble these up so that everyone could benefit from some of these questions that have been raised offline. So the first question came through from a fourth round notary that's signing for the first time. And their question was, if I look at a DataCap request and I see that another notary has decided to pass on it for whatever reason, as a notary, am I prevented or blocked from moving forward with that application? So the short answer is no, you're not. You can definitely sign for whatever diligence you want to provide if another notary has decided to pass. I would say that if this comes up, the diligence plan would fall on you. So there might be times where a notary might ask somebody to fill out a form, let's say, and that data applicant did not fill out that notary's form. Therefore, that notary might not move forward with going forward. That doesn't mean that you can't sign it. So as a quick answer on this one, just because another notary has passed on an application for whatever standards, review, or whatever reason, that does not stop you from performing your diligence and moving forward with that application as you see fit. The second was, hey, I'm a new notary. I've seen some notaries that are in kind of the top slots that use some type of a form to do their diligence rather than asking the same questions in GitHub. Is that form process allowed? And the answer again on this one is yes. Those have been really successful, especially with some notaries that are doing a lot of these application reviews. Rather than post these in GitHub again and again, they've created their own fillable form so that a data applicant would go fill out that form, provide the necessary information. Then that notary could review that information and then ask clarifying questions to really make sure that that diligence is completed. The only thing I would say is if you're a new notary and you are going to have some type of form, it's to remember to bias towards transparency. So this is open data, open process, open transparency in the Fil Plus program. So if you are doing these kind of steps, make sure that it is open, that it's auditable, that it can be made available for anybody who is to ask these questions on this application after the fact. If this just goes into a black box after it's filled out, it's kind of the same as an offline communication in email or Slack. So just be mindful of that if you are using the form, that you're having some way to share the results of that or share your reason for approving that data cap. And that kind of came down to one of the third questions that I was getting. It's how do you ensure that your diligence is transparent? So one of the easiest ways to do this as a new notary is just to make sure that you're communicating in GitHub. It doesn't have to be the primary way, but what this means is if there was a data applicant who messaged you on Slack and they say, hi, I know you're a notary. Can you please take a look at my application? Maybe some of the communication happens in Slack. Once you see the application in GitHub, you fill out any information and then sign it in the registry. Make sure that you leave a comment in GitHub about your Slack communication, just as something as simple as, hey, this is Kevin. I was Slacking with Simon and we discussed X, Y, and Z. And because of that, I feel comfortable signing this application, or I have no further questions before you go forward. And what that does is it takes that offline communication and just gives it some weight as it goes forward. So if you do have these offline talks in Slack or in email or other Telegram channels, just be sure that when you are entering this comment in, you're trying to be as transparent as possible in those applications just to prevent any kind of questions later that come down the line. And the fourth most common question that came through is, hey, I'm a new notary. How do I know which applications to sign, where to find them, and how to communicate with those applicants? So in the video that Phil put together, the registry is a great tool to see and sign a lot of those applications. But you can also check out the Slack channel, Fil Plus Application Review. In that Slack channel, data applicants that are looking for notaries to sign will post in that specifically. What's nice about communicating with those data applicants in that channel is that you have a very warm recipient, meaning that they're reachable, that they're actively looking out. Since some of these LDN applications might have been created in some time ago, you don't know if you're communicating with someone that's not checking GitHub regularly. So as a new notary, that's a great place to see those applications, then link back to the GitHub and check it out, ask any diligence questions that you may have before signing to move forward. So again, Fil Plus application is a great way to find those applicants. The second is if you just check GitHub yourself, you could sort this and check out by region, geographic, by industries that you may work on, or see which applications were newer, older, and then sort by it. So you can always go straight to GitHub to review the applications without the registry. But of course, you do have the plus.fil.org registry website. That's your tool to actually see these applications. It's linked to your ledger in GitHub, and that's where you'll actually be assigning those. So I'm going to pause, and for any notaries that are on the call that might have any other questions that they want to ask, and we'll just take any time for this onboarding now that the data has been delivered to your ledger. All All right. Anything changes, we'll have plenty of time at the end to circle back to any topics you may have. So if you were a notary, you completed the 4th round and you did not receive access to the LDN v3.1 or the new multi-sig, we have been collecting those manually. So some of you have fallen into this category where like, hey, you got a new ledger since we rolled out 835. What we were doing is we've collected those in a group. And I think probably at the end of this week or early next, what we'll do is manually add you on to that 835. So again, what we had asked for on the last call was that if you weren't on that issue, just to leave a comment. We're collecting all those and we'll manually put. Everyone has completed the disclosures and verifications, so thank you. I think we're just troubleshooting a few that had issues with their registry verification with their ledger, or those of you that received a new ledger ID. So we'll be adding you in a couple of days. Thank you again for commenting. If you don't see your name, that's the best way to go on there. And then everybody else, the data caps are live. So this got sent, I think, last week or the week before. So your LDN is filled up with data cap. It's already been refreshed. So if you were a new notary on this call, you are off to the races. You have data cap to distribute. You have the video of the walkthrough, the FAQs. And if you have any questions as you go through it about an individual application, the process, anything whatsoever, feel free to shoot me a DM, or even better, ask in the private notary channel so everybody can kind of see and learn from that. Otherwise, I'll take that and bake these into future calls so everyone can go. But again, notaries, thank you. Appreciate it. You guys are all set. Let me know if we could help you in any way. So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any final questions on notaries before moving on to proposals. Quick. We had this identical slide 2 weeks ago. We're giving it one final voice before we start to move forward on these 4 issues were relatively low spice. They were essentially looking for feedback from you as far as like, how do we structure the staking and really moving forward with that? We'll talk more about that with the trust and transparency. Auto closing applications that have been around for more than 2 weeks. What is the data cap removal process and how should trust and transparency take input on this process? And then how do we have a code of conduct? So what's nice is that TNT and these issues are actually closing a lot of these out. So we'll talk about TNT as we get forward on the call. But just again, the proposals in GitHub are a great way for you to make your voice heard, whether you're starting a new application or just commenting on it. And for those notaries that have selected SLA 3s, 4s, and 5s, we're looking for you to leave comments, feedback, and input, and really help be the thought leaders on how we shape this roadmap and these projects. So friendly reminder to go check these out as we go forward on it. The data per request 832, this has been open for a few weeks. I think we're soliciting the final input on this one. And this really boils down to is if we have a data set that has multiple aspects to it, should this have multiple applications or can these all be grouped into one larger application? So pretty consistent feedback on this issue. Just as a friendly reminder, this is open on 832. The link is right there in the deck. If you have any final thoughts before we move to close this out, this is that final opportunity, and we'll have time at the end of this call and discussion for 832 if you have final thoughts on if this was not a good idea as far as structuring the LDN application separated by the data type, or if you want to make sure that this is something that you agree with, giving it a thumbs up is really helpful as we take that input and put it into it. And then 839, Phil, I know that I kind of stepped on you in the morning. Would you like to talk about this one?
Yeah, sure. So for context, this application relates to how in the future, we're going to move away from using comments to store data about LDN applications into using JSON files and code to store the information of LDN applications. So instead of posting a comment to propose or posting a comment to approve or an LDN application, what's happening is that we have a JSON file and we have a pull request, right? And then in that pull request, the approval message and the proposal message are commits to that pull request branch. And so this is much more standard of a way to store the LDN application data. So after I posted it a few weeks ago, there was more comments on this application from our engineers at Keiko. we are figuring out how the specifics of the JSON files and how we're going to store this LDN application data. So that would include the size of the JSON file itself. Should we have one big file that stores all the LDN applications, or should we have multiple small files, one JSON file for each LDN application? There are pros and cons to each. There's also an alternative that we thought of, which is kind of have many JSON files, but just archive the old ones that we haven't used or interacted with in 2 weeks. That's also one possibility. This is still an early ideation phase. This is an open call for anyone to contribute to this idea or comment on this idea if you think this is a way forward. So yeah, with that, if anyone has any comments, please let us know in 839. Yeah, thank you so much. Back to you, Kerry.
Thanks. These are it for the new proposals. So before we go on to any of the working group updates, I'd like to pause and see if anybody has any thoughts, input, or questions about these open proposals that are currently outstanding. All right, let's take a look at the working groups. So KZ was on the morning call. I'll repost the link so you have the video. But Deep, Simon, Phil, before I go on with this, feel free to unmute, interrupt me if you'd like to talk. I'm going to pause for 2 seconds. Otherwise, I'll just regurgitate what Kevin was talking about in the morning. All right, seeing no webcam switch on, I'll carry forward on this one. So essentially what the E-Fil Plus program is looking at, as you know, is onboarding that private data. So what KZ has been working on is 2 things. The first is like a survey and metrics on like what those represent as far as data sets. You see on the right, what they've been doing is taking a look at the count of tickets that have been coming in and trying to have a benchmark on what the majority of this is. So if you can see, the 2 outliers on the data requests that they're receiving are registered, and we're waiting on KYB, the knowing the business, and then the client onboarding data, like making that move forward. So in these statistics that they're pulling, there's been 22 applications that have come through since October, a lot more than what we expected this program. So it's really growing quickly and effectively as it goes through there. And they're actively onboarding 9 of those clients as they go forward. And what this represents is essentially over 100 petabytes of data as it comes back. What they're testing out on the E-Fil Plus enterprise team is looking at how they're building that trust in that onboarding process as it goes forward. Are there caps on that data, or are we constantly rebuilding that application for them to constantly resubmit this? Or are we making sure that that SLA can get down to less than 48 hours to make this a smoother business practice as they go forward? When KZ was pulling these metrics, he was trying to look at the countries that break down for these requests, and that's what that bottom right chart is telling you right there. So you can see of these requests that were accepted, the 25 overall since October, the majority of them are coming from the United States, China, with a little bit of outliers around Singapore, and then just a couple spatterings across the world. So what KZ is going to be doing as far as next steps is he's putting together a client impact survey. So essentially soliciting feedback from those of you involved in Enterprise Fil Plus and these data applications that are submitting. And they're also looking at how they can streamline the tooling to make that TTD as quick as possible. I think one of their goals is 48 hours. So how do they even improve on that 48-hour process as they go forward on that? They do not have a meeting that's set up for this coming week, but they use Slack and the communication channels for all questions that you may have, as well as the 2 links that you'll see in the deck for the E-Fil Plus super site, as well as the link to the applications. On the morning call, there was a request to see where can I find the graphs and the metrics that have been kind of referenced on this E-Fil Plus. I'll re-share that again, but if you check the post that I put in Fil Plus in the morning, you'll see there's a few links below that. One of them goes to the interplanetary dashboard. That's where you can see the graphs, the charts, and the breakdowns on how this data is collected. Again, if you have any questions about Enterprise Fil Plus, their Slack has all the links and information as it goes forward. Trust and transparency has quite a bit going on in their world right now. Again, open call, Deep, Simon, Phil, if you want to unmute and kind of step in. Otherwise, I'll I'll try to do RG as best I can with these. So the first was looking at like, how does the code of conduct really be an effective use on the trust and transparency? So they put out a proposal 829. This came out about maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago. And what the heart of this proposal was is how do you build consensus around looking at any kind of, like, we call it fraud, but essentially violations of that standard in the application. And in that review, how does that process take place? So in this proposal, they really outlined the steps for what will be taken if there was kind of a breach of that application or a breach in that disclosure and coming forward on that. And that's what you see in the bottom of the slide called out in bullet point number 1. So essentially, if there is any kind of conduct review and the trust and transparency reviews it, step 1 is giving like a very public warning. We're working to make this program as reputational based with the leaderboard, and this really plays into that. So if there is any kind of violation on behalf of the storage provider, the client, the notary, and the TNT has done their review, step 1 is to issue that public mark of like, hey, here's your warning, do not let this happen again. If this carries forward or if it's warranted in it, they have the steps outlined, which up to and including blacklisting of the client address, removal of the notary from the program, banning from Slack, banning from the GitHub, banning from these calls. So as this escalates, trust and transparency has really tried to take a stepped approach to it with an escalation as it goes forward. So since this impacts all of us on the call, what I'll do is pause before I go on to the next trust and transparency and see if anybody has any questions about this code of conduct or any thoughts or feedback from the community. Right, seeing no hands, we'll carry it forward. But again, if anything comes to mind, we'll have plenty of time at the end for any discussions. The second was the upfront KYC. When we talked about this one on a few governance calls in the past, we referred to this kind of like a DAO, or kind of looking at this for like, how are we making this KYC process off the bat? So the solution is not having like a check that goes into it, but looking for different regions to kind of vendor and process checks in the community. And with that, express interest in it. So again, this was issue that came forward. This has been open for a few weeks. Trust and Transparency is closing this out, this 833. And what they're essentially asking is that upfront KYC before moving forward with more details. This one was a lot more straightforward than the KYC for like the Trust and Transparency Code of Conduct. But again, making it mandatory for that process link to GitHub, so not skipping that step. So again, if anybody has any thoughts on this issue, this is closed out officially in GitHub, but we'll have time at the end of this call if anybody has any thoughts or feedback on ways to improve this or any kind of final discussion as this moves forward. And the last from the TNT working group is essentially what we're looking at is if we're onboarding lots of data and we're trying to reach these huge data goals as we go forward, there's an accelerator program that's kicking off from one of our storage provider, Greater Heat. And what Greater Heat is essentially implementing is how to onboard 100 petabytes of this data within the next 6 months. So they're trying to make this data available and public and going forward. So you're going to see a lot more proposal issues that come back on this one. And it's how do they convert this existing non-Filecoin data into the Fil Plus system and onto the Filecoin token storage system. So again, this data that they're going to be bringing on, it's not private, so it won't have to go through the E-Fil Plus program. It's open data. And so you'll see a new proposal issue from Caro and RG kind of spearheading this. But this is just one more public resource of data that will soon be onboarded through this accelerator program that we'll see. And in the morning session, Caro talked a little bit about the moon landing program to try to make this as streamlined as possible from accelerating that data to get it onto the Filecoin network. So again, we put that link in the Slack channel for the comment earlier this morning with all the links on the moon link landing as we go forward on that one. But those were the 3 updates that came through from RG this morning on the Trust and Transparency. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the updates that we had for you from the governance side. I'm going to turn it back over to you with the remaining time and see if there's anything on your mind or from this call that you'd like to share or discuss. All right, well, I'm going to open up one line of questioning, and it has to do with time zones. So here in California, we had Spring Forward that happened on Sunday. Taking a look at this time, I wanted to see if this time zone has any kind of conflict. We're probably going to have a quick survey that goes off in the Fil Plus channel for notaries, just making sure that that time stays on a consistent, regular basis so you could dial it in basis around your workload. But if anybody has thoughts on that meeting time as I float this in Slack, this would be a great opportunity to either post it in chat here or unmute and flag it on the call for all of us. Bueller. All right, we'll see nothing coming through. I think we're going to wrap a little bit early tonight. Again, if there's anything, last alibis, feel free to message us in Slack. Otherwise, what I'll do is I'll repost these on the YouTube channel and share that link as always in the Fil Plus public channel. Wanted to thank you guys for all dialing in. Big, friendly, happy Pi Day to all of you still in the 14th time zone. Other than that, be safe, be happy, and we'll see you signing. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.